if you saw this, how would you react? Well, author Tim Ash is here to explain why your customer's primal brain, as I'm running out of breath, is hard at work on your customer's preferences. Roll the intro, maestro. Is it okay to come out? Is it gone? Okay. My producer's telling me in my ear that lion got put back into the wild where he belongs, chasing gazelles. Welcome back to What the Tech. I'm your host, Rolando Rosas, the founder of Global Tech Worldwide, and I'm glad you joined me today because we've got some really good stuff in store for you. And if you haven't watched What the Tech before, we put our 20 years of office technology expertise to work for you. And we also talk to business influencers that are shaping the landscape and information that you need to know. So, helping me along this wild kingdom today is somebody that joins me at this hour on Tuesdays when we go live. His name is the one and only Dave Kelly.
Listen, when I've heard people say theoretically it's a jungle out there, but man, you really do have a jungle over there.
I had to get Tias to go round him up and take him back out in the yard there. Let him go chase some deer. We have a lot of deer out where I live, so he can go do some a little bit population control. We'll be in better shape.
You know, that would be a very scary thing to know that we aren't at the top of the food chain in our own neighborhood. Having a lion running around, no thanks.
There are no predators around here. Here in Northern Virginia, there's so many state and national parks. There's a bunch of federal buildings a couple of miles here and there. A lot of land is restricted, so these deer just run wild all over the place here. We've got the border of the river. We could talk all day about that, but anywho, today's guest, Tim Ash, talking about the primal brain. Dave, I am so fascinated about the brain. I did a little bit of psychology study in college, so I am really looking forward to hearing Tim and what he's got to say, especially on how we can apply that to customer behavior and how we can actually use some techniques and tips. And you want to stick around to the end where Tim is going to talk about the big lie. Not the one that you're thinking of, but the big lie that we're all stuck with in believing when it comes to our behavior and our brain. So Dave, I'm fascinated and can't wait till he tells us a little bit more about that, plus some other secrets regarding the primal brain that we may not have, it's not common knowledge, but it's documented studies and a bunch of stuff that he studied over the years that he actually puts to apply with businesses, e-commerce, brands, and all that. So let's get right to him, Dave. Let's not mess around.
All right, get him in.
Tim Ash, he is a keynote speaker, and Tim Ash has been around the world. He is a highly sought after author and speaker when it comes to the topic of neuromarketing. And he will break down what we're going to hear today. But let me tell you a little bit about Tim. Tim is acknowledged authority on evolutionary psychology and digital marketing. That's where I got to meet Tim at a Prosper show a couple of years ago in Vegas, talking about digital marketing. And he is a sought after international keynote speaker, as I mentioned, and is the best-selling author. Kudos to his title. Best-selling author of Unleash Your Primal Brain, as well as landing page optimization. That's how I found out about him, because he has a lot of stuff, a lot of numbers when it comes to landing page optimization. And then taking these two things together, if you're trying to market something online, you definitely want to pay attention. Lastly, let me tell you that Tim has been mentioned by Forbes as a top 10 online marketing expert, as well as by Entrepreneurial magazine as an online marketing influencer to watch. And that's why we've got him here on the podcast today. Let me bring out of the back room, hopefully no lions chasing him around, Tim Ash.
Hello, gentlemen. Hey, actually, that was almost like a custom intro for me because I'm a Leo. So
Oh,
yeah, lions are my people.
All
oh
right.
my
I take
goodness.
great pride in that. Oh, I think I better stop with the puns.
Hey, before we go any further, Dave, are you hearing Tim okay, or do you hear him soft? I'm hearing, to me, I hear him just a touch soft.
Yeah, Tim, you might be a little low, but
I hopefully this is better, and I can always be louder. That's
No,
not a
no, no.
problem.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, you were just sounding just a little soft to me. But yeah, I did not know which clip we were gonna run. We had we had a good dozen of them. That was one of the takes, and our producer Ori ran with it, and he, he did a great job. So Ori, kudos to you. So Tim, glad that you can be with us today. Where are you joining us from today?
From San Diego, California, where yesterday it was 80 degrees and sunny. Today it's raining a little bit, but it's a brutal San Diego winter. What can I say?
Oh my goodness.
Sounds
We're out here on the East Coast suffering. We won't see any relief. They say a couple of days it'll be in the 50s. So I'm hoping that's warm for right now. So I'll take it.
Oh, I've paid my dues. I was born in Moscow, Russia, lived in Albany, New York, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. So
Ooh.
hey, I'm not here by accident. That was a very deliberate trajectory.
You
Going
strategically
south.
picked it.
Yeah.
smart.
Well, Tim, I gave the folks a little bit on who you are, what you've done, but tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got here. I know you and I met a couple years ago in Vegas, and now you've got this unbelievable book talking about the primal brain and how businesses can really digest that and essentially crank their marketing to 10. And with some of these research and studies you've found through the years and how we can use that. But tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey so our folks can understand who you are and what you're doing.
Well, I guess you could say I've really come full circle. I came out originally to San Diego to go to the University of California. I studied computer engineering and cognitive science. Those were my two undergrad majors. And then I stayed here for graduate school and almost finished my PhD in what would now be called artificial intelligence or neural networks. But after 7 years, I got the entrepreneurial itch. And so I quit the PhD program and started my first company. And so had been in digital marketing ever since that.
And, I remember the first time I heard you speak, you broke down a landing page and how in several, actually, I remember this was at the Prosper show, and you broke down several different websites for different entrepreneurs that were in the room. And I was amazed at some of the stuff that you were able to analyze and say, hey, this probably should be placed better here. And this is what happens here. And this is how the journey happens. And I was like, man, this guy's got into some insights that I had not heard before. And this primal brain thing is certainly more of that. And you've got a book that's easy to read and easy to follow. I've read portions of the book myself, and I want to go through and ask you a few things that you bring up in this book. But before we go to that, and we go to the tips and tricks that you've learned, I want you to check out this little video, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Go ahead, Ori.
Hello, ladies. Look at your man. Now back to me. Now back at your man. Now back to me. Sadly, he isn't me. But if he stopped using lady-scented body wash and switched to Old Spice, he could smell like he's me. Look down. Back up. Where are you? You're on a boat with the man your man could smell like. What's in your hand? Back at me. I have it. It's an oyster with 2 tickets to that thing you love. Look again. The tickets are now diamond. Anything is possible when your man smells like Old Spice and not a lady. I'm on a horse.
I'm not on a horse, but I'm sitting in a chair.
Well, you're an equally good-looking man, and I say that,
Thank you,
full
thank you.
heterosexuality.
I'm confident. Don't worry about it, Tim. I'm pretty confident myself. But tell me, there's been classic MBA style case studies done around this. Why was this so effective and turn really an established brand like Old Spice and bring it to a new generation completely outside their demographics, and really it doubled their sales after the launch of this campaign? Talk about what resonated with people from this type of marketing.
Well, I think that the number one imperative of all life on Earth is to reproduce. And so that's a very high stakes event. One of the chapters in my book, Unleash Your Primal Brain, is about gender differences and sexuality. To throw our genes into the next generation, that's it. Everything else is a warm up. I mean, surviving, eating food, dominance, that's all foreplay, so to speak, in order to be able to reproduce. And so whenever we touch on those kinds of high stakes events, what you find is that people, especially men, become much more risk taking, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get in the game, so to speak. And so that's very, very powerful primal motivation right there. By the way, women don't take bigger risks. Men do. It's very interesting.
And when you say bigger risk, what exactly do you mean by bigger risks? Is it like, being a daredevil, evil Knievel type stuff, or are we talking something else?
Yeah, actually, it is along those lines. Your judgment goes out the window. You're willing to do things you wouldn't normally do. And they're basically what women are looking for in men, grossly speaking, is access to power, because we need to they need their children supported over a long period of time, or we develop very slowly. And so
they look about men, we're just slower
power.
Developers.
Sorry,
you're saying that men are slow in developing?
Yeah, we're a little slow, period. But so we either look for people that already have power, or those willing to do what it takes to get power. So usually you'll find earlier in life, women will be attracted sometimes to the bad boy, right? The one.
And these are just generalizations, or are these because I can hear some women virtually saying, "What? What are you talking about, Tim?"
Again, earlier in life, let's just put it that way. And so the firefighter, the stock trader, the daredevil, and these are people that are willing to take risks to get power and dominance later in life. But if that path doesn't materialize, the woman will abandon him. That's why there aren't too many women dating bad boys in middle age. They want someone established. They're not going to place bets and spend years hoping that you're going to turn out to be anything but a useless piece of crap.
Oh my.
So with this old first, Tim, are you familiar? You're familiar with that Old Spice ad that we just showed you?
Oh yeah. I saw it when it ran originally. So yep.
so are they kind of communicating? What is that primal message that they are communicating? Because it's what I think is interesting is they're talking to the female audience. It's a man's product, but they're talking to the female audience.
Actually, they're not. They're talking to the male audience. They're saying in order to be attractive to women, you either have to have good genes and risk taking or trappings of power. And look, he's got diamonds. He's got physical prowess. He's got a good physique. It's like the total package. Why choose just one? So you have power and the ability to get power by showing risk-taking behaviors.
Sure.
So it's really talking to the man. This is what it takes to get the woman. I mean, let's not be confused about that.
Because it sounded like he was calling for the women. He was trying to get the women's attention within that video, within that commercial. But maybe at the same time, what he's doing is summoning the male audience to watch it. But I have a question.
Let's put it this way. I mean, there's some things that women do buy and influence the buying decisions of, but men's deodorant isn't one of them. So it's the man that has to go to the store and actually pick up that Old Spice. So they're definitely talking to the man, but they're refracting that through the prism of what's going to be attractive to the woman. That's why it works.
So now that's within a healthcare beauty type product and marketplace. Can you apply some of those same principles to more conservative type solutions? Something like communication devices, hardware, software, things like that. Is it appropriate to kind of trigger that primal brain in that fashion?
Well, absolutely. Well, that's just one tactic. What do we prize in mates? But basically you can apply other strategies. So one of them is risk taking, and the fact that we respond a lot more to negative stuff. We're wired to look for survival threats. I give you an example, Dave. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Pistachio.
All right, pistachio. Okay, here's a nice bowl of pistachio ice cream. But before I give it to you, Dave, can I just whack the back of your hand with a hammer as you reach for it? What do you say?
No,
not so much.
Hammer.
Right? So I know what's going to motivate you more: of pain avoidance or pleasure seeking. Pain avoidance is about twice as powerful a motivation. And one of the things that many companies make a mistake on, especially in tech, is that they start talking about their features. We have 37 gigaflops of throughput compared to one for our competitors. Boring, right? Instead, you should say, look, your network goes down, you're screwed. Your whole business is going to suffer. You're going to lose money. Clients are going to hate you. That reputation stink will follow you for years, and all because you cheaped out on the server hardware. That's how you sell anything. You sell it with downside. You sell it with rubbing salt into the wound. That's a very powerful evolutionary adaptation that you should take advantage of.
Are you trying to say that we should scare customers into buying a solution?
Absolutely.
Is that kind of what I hear you saying?
I mean, well, let's go back to the personal health example. Let's just say you're selling tooth whitening. Most people would say, well, have a great white smile. And I would sell it like this. Are you afraid to open your mouth and reveal those yellow, gray teeth of yours? Do people think that you have resting bastard face? Are you never going to get a date? Is the way that they're going to find you dead in your apartment is because your cat is meowing after eating parts of you and is still hungry? That's how you sell tooth whitening. You don't sell the pretty smile. You sell the full implications of going down the current path.
It sounds like you're talking about emotional connection or even consequences that you would have as a result of not taking rational actions. And I know that in your book you have a lot to say about rational decision making, because you know what, like you're saying, your bastard face, maybe I don't have a bastard face, but wait a
bastard
minute.
resting face, yes.
There you go. But maybe there's some, do I? Maybe you make me question myself about that, and maybe I'm not so secure anymore. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Maybe I need to check that out.
Oh, he picked you apart fast, Rolando.
Yeah.
You got me, Tim. Now I'm self-confident about what you just said. I gotta go in the mirror and take a look at what's going on.
There's like all those insecurities are being brought up. Sorry. What can I tell you? No, but I put it this way. You talked about the word rational. There are no rational decisions. And I mean that literally.
Hold up a second. Now you stumbled into a pro tip. Ori, I'd like you to get ready, if you haven't, so that we can rewind for a few seconds what Tim is about to talk about, because I believe this is a pro tip. Go for it, Ori. Tip numero uno. Take it away, Tim.
There are no rational decisions. I mean that literally. When people make decisions, they're either an automatic or an emotional component to them. And when you ask them about why they made the decision, then other parts of the brain light up to explain it. So in the famous words of science fiction author Robert Heinlein, man is not a rational animal. He's a rationalizing animal. So why we make the decision has nothing to do with the alibi we come up with after the fact. And you literally cannot make a decision without an emotional component.
And so it should be part of, if you're looking at it from a business perspective, the emotional component to whatever you're marketing, whether it's a super boring thing or a super exciting thing, there has to be an emotional component or it's going to fall really flat. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So talking to me about numbers and savings, and you can prepay for a year instead of paying monthly and you save 20%. That's like snore city. Nobody is being influenced by that emotionally. So you really have to understand the values, the importance of it, the risk taking that's involved, the consequences at stake emotionally for someone. And this is equally true of business to business as well as business to consumer. For business to consumer decisions, it's your personal risk. For business to business, there's also the organizational risk. I'll lose my job. I won't get a raise. We'll have this big group grope if we went with the wrong software and our company doesn't really work well on it. There's bigger consequences, but it all comes back to emotions.
Well, let me just rephrase, because I looked at your book and you talk about this in terms of the big lie. And this is chapter 1 of your book. And I know that this is kind of how you're framing it. And this is what you refer to the big lie in terms of us being rational. We make decisions that, or we think that our customers are making rational decision. A 1 + 2 = 3, but sometimes, or a lot of the times, other factors come into play, like emotional factors, instinct, and they influence that in that equation of 1 + 2 = 3. Maybe 1 + 2 may equal 5. And some of that rational stuff that you call the big lie is not at play as much as we think. And before you answer that, I wanted to give a shout out to Fernando, who is watching us from Argentina. Arriba, Argentina, porque me gusta la carne de Argentina. Fabuloso, la carne mejor en el mundo, en Argentina. Shout out to you, Fernando. Go ahead. Tim, take it away.
Fernando, mucho gusto. Very nice to meet you. So I would say that, again, my train of thought derailed, but we were talking about, help me out here, Rolando.
You're trying to the big lie and rationalizing. And
yeah. So again, it's not most of the time. Let me say this literally. We cannot make any decisions with just the rational mind. All it does is present us options. How you prioritize those depends either on automatic instincts or on past experiences you've had with it. So for example, you might like birds until one day one takes a crap right in your face, and then you try to avoid birds after that. So it's not like birds are inherently good or bad. It depends on your life experience with birds. And so those past memories and the ability to have kind of an evaluation of, did that help me survive or did that hinder me from surviving? That's how we prioritize our decisions. So most decisions, the answer is do nothing, because it takes energy to do anything consciously or change. But some decisions, if they're pleasurable enough or I guess destructive and dangerous enough, we'll do something about. So the job of a marketer is to influence you emotionally and to move you off of your comfortable spot.
Wow. Is there, or Dave, were you going to say something? I don't want to steal your thunder.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about rational sales proposals. So I'm trying to propose you something, and I think that you're a rational decision maker. So I'm trying to bring you with facts. I brought you a quote. Your quote is half of the current solution that you have. It's going to save you time and money and energy. It's going to be better than what you have. But it sounds like those are all the rational things, so tying that into the emotional spectrum so that they sign and they want to do business with you, it sounds a lot trickier than just having the best and least expensive and fastest of something to bring to a client.
Yeah, absolutely. So the horrible sales book, but with really good evolutionary psychology principles behind it, is called Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. So it might be painful to go through, but what he talks about is SPIN is an acronym for situation, then problem, then implication, then need, payoff. And so what he's basically saying, here you are going along, let me get some facts, that's the situation, then let me explore some potential problems, and then dig into the full implications of staying on that road, and then let you imagine life without those problems. Now look at what's psychologically happening. It's like a car going over a pothole, right? You're going along, you think everything's okay. All of a sudden you have this ba-bump. You go down and up, right? Well, basically that emotional transient, that pothole strike, is what determines how much value you place on the solution. If it's a small problem, you won't pay a lot to fix it. You may not even bother to fix it. But if it's a big problem, then you're going to value the solution a lot more. So what you want to do is create this big difference between the hell scenario, taking you down into the bowels of hell, and the heaven, what's life like without the problem. So by staying on the same path and doing nothing is the default of the brain, because it's trying to conserve energy. So you have to perturb me, you have to yank me down and back up, and you haven't even talked about what your solution is.
I see. So if you were to paint a scenario, let's I like walking through examples and exercises, because that's what folks are going to take away. I'm some service provider. I'm providing a service to a client. Outside, obviously, you want to be everybody's friend. You want to connect with them so that they have trust and confidence in you. But if you were going to promote a particular service, what you want to start off with the problem, and maybe even make it a little bit larger than life, from what I'm hearing you saying. Like, here's the consequence of not having backup internet. you will lose millions of dollars. I'm exaggerating, but you tell me
Yeah.
if I'm far off the mark. You're going to lose millions of dollars. Your business is going to go bankrupt. Your customers are going to abandon you, and you won't survive more than a month after that event.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's not just the pain that I feel in the moment. It's actually saying, what's the lifetime cost of that? In other words, magnify it. You could say, hey, we're flying in a plane. We're up at 30,000 feet, and we're only descending at 2 feet per minute. Well, in 15,000 minutes, we're going to hit the freaking ground. Okay, so you want to paint that picture for me. It's like, it might not be so bad right now, but what are the full implications? And that's what I mean by rubbing salt into the wound.
I see. Well, that's interesting. And you know, it's fascinating because it almost separates what we consider in sales. And sometimes you're like, well, the important thing is the price, that we're competitive. The important thing is that our product is the best. The important thing is that our product is better than the our next competitor, and then even after that. But what you're saying, it turns a lot of that upside down from what I've read, going to school, and it is not about that. That's probably in terms of priority. When customers or potential customers are looking at a product or service, they're looking for maybe something that resonated emotionally or made them feel a certain way. Because I've read somewhere in your book that even the intensity around that experience or the emotional connection it's just not just emotion, but the intensity that helps you remember things in a way that just maybe numbers don't. Like if I saw a post about this is the greatest product in the world versus like what you're saying, here's the consequences of what's going to happen in about 15,000 minutes.
Yeah, and by the way, you also need to understand your audience, and I can't overstate this enough. Most marketers, in my experience, basically say, "Hey, here's our product. All 8 billion people on the planet need it. Buy it now." And you have the big megaphone, and it's this inside-out approach. And instead, you should say, "Hey, who's out there? What misconceptions do they have? What other busy stuff going on in their life? What misinformation? Let's bring them in and help them buy." Okay, and help them figure out how we're going to help them. And that's very different than most marketing I've seen. So it's really, really important to understand who you're talking to. And a big problem with many brands is they think of their solutions as generic and needed by everyone. I would rather, one of the advice I give to people is hyper target your audience. We had lots of clients in education, lots of different universities and so on. And one of them had like single moms that were going back to school while holding down a job. Now, I can talk to that group much more specifically than I can to just like, we have student loans and you'll get a degree in 2 years. You know, that's just very generic. So understand your audience is super critical.
Down to the way you say it. So if we're talking to so a lot of folks that are watching us today, there may be decision makers or policy makers or marketers that are older, and the product and or decision maker of a service is generally older. It's not going to be an intern, right? So if I'm trying to market to, let's say, somebody that is of that demographic, this is something internally that we've been ingesting a lot lately, is maybe using imagery of people that are older rather than a teenager or somebody that's 20. And it seems
right,
like
or somebody that's got blue hair and nipple piercings. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. Okay, that might be your end customer, but like you say, that may not be the financial buyer. So if you want to influence them, they have to feel like seen and heard and understood as well. And let me give you a reason why that's an example from the book, why that's important. I can describe an objective reality, and yet you're going to have very different relationship to it based on who you are. So here's the objective reality. We can record this with a video camera. Ready?
Okay, hold on a second. Let me see. Pro tip number 2 before you start that one. Ori,
2.
give me a number 2 pro tip. Pro tip numero 2. Take it away, Tim.
I love the jaunty music. It's awesome. So imagine if I record this objective reality. The bullfighter stands in the middle of the arena. The bull charges them. They deftly sidestep, and with a thrust of their sword between the shoulder blades of the bull, pierce its heart and kill it and bring it to a full stop. and it crumples at their feet. Okay. Now that's an objective reality I can record. Now, who's the audience? Let's say I was talking to someone in Spain that had a long history of bullfighting in their culture. Well, the story is then about man versus nature, about excellence, about courage, about all of these positive qualities, discipline. If I'm talking to somebody from PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, they're saying, well, this is animal torture and someone's paying and subsidizing it, and people are gleefully watching the suffering of other living beings, and it's disgusting and should be stopped immediately. Same objective reality being experienced very differently based on who your target audience is.
And that makes a lot of sense. It's the same story. One person is attracted to it, and the other one might be disgusted by that. Hyper targeting, very interesting. Looking to apply that. It can be difficult to hyper target within this tech industry of just communications, but I can understand why some organizations will focus on vertical markets specifically for that one reason, so that they can target that message.
Yeah, so the way I describe it, a brand is like jam on bread. You spread it too thin, you won't be even able to taste it after a while. So what you really need to do is think of your marketing campaigns as a series of laser focused understandings of very niche groups. Don't be generic. Generic is death.
I heard something, a different marketer, I like to follow because he has a lot of nice tips, and he's really dialed in, especially on the tech side, is Gary Vaynerchuk. He talks
Gary,
about this, and he's explained it in a couple of different ways, so that if we were going to do some kind of campaign and we were targeting, let's just say internet services, we may want to do those even like regionally. Like he even talks about trying to market down to the block, so that if you know that there's some internet need in Bedford-Stuyvesant that's a slightly different than over in Silicon Valley, you address the same concern, but maybe you had a small twist. So like, hey, Bedford-Stuyvesant residents, are you tired of Verizon? Are you tired of that internet going down? And then the same message turn around in Silicon Valley. Hey, are you tired of paying hey, Silicon Valley customers, are you tired of paying high prices for your internet connection? Well, and he says that is so effective and reaches that target audience much better than just one bland commercial from coast to coast.
Yes, and I'll agree with that, but I'll take it a step further. What you're talking about there is objective demographic information. We can target geofence somebody and know what neighborhood they're in and then market to them. Well, that's great, but I'm talking more about the psychology, like the belief systems, the tribal affiliation of the people. So these people might be geographically dispersed, but they all think of the world in a different way. And you want to understand their values and their belief systems and what's important to them in order to emotionally persuade them. Just knowing they live on a particular block and doing a mass insert of local hated cable company, that's a little different.
So what you're saying is know your audience, know them intimately, and go ahead and focus on those niches, because it has a better payoff, a better ROI than just like what you're saying, geofencing. With that may give you some results, but even going more specifically, like you were saying, maybe tying the single moms who have a college degree inside Bedford-Stuyvesant that have one kid.
Yeah, I mean, you could have some geographic component to where you're targeting, because that's also likely to have values associated with a certain tribal or cultural beliefs in that area or that neighborhood or that state or that country. That's certainly true. There's huge differences in culture based on where you live and the self-selected people that choose to live there next to you. But I guess I'm saying is you really need to understand my values, and your story should resonate for that. So let's take a company like REI. You can make some assumptions about the people that shop there. They love the outdoors. They care about saving the planet. Guess what? They're probably going to resonate with global climate crisis concerns and not think that it's all fake news. So you're basically attracting a psychological tribe and saying, I'm the Pied Piper, follow me, I'm passionate about this, I understand you, you're like me. So it's more of a tribal affiliation again rather than a geographic one.
And should brands now along those lines? So you brought up REI. Let's say I'm not REI. I haven't built up a brand around maybe a cause. So like the environment.
Mhm.
Are there things that brands should adopt, whether you're a small brand, a solopreneur, all the way to a multinational, to help you identify with your target audience?
Yes, one of the things that I talk a lot about with my executive marketing consultant clients, usually CEOs or CMOs of companies, is what is your origin myth? This is a central construct around which you should be building your brand. So and it generally takes the structure of what's called the hero's journey. You know, we've had these since the Odyssey, and Star Wars as a modern version of it. But the story is, okay, life was okay, and then bad stuff happened, and I went on a quest. I had some unexpected allies, some adversity. I slayed the dragon, and then there was a re-greening of the earth. And now my mission is to bring that passionate thing to the world. You know, so what is your origin myth, whether it's embodied in your founders, or in your product, or in your approach to people or whom you serve? You can't use the megaphone, like I said earlier. You need to be a magnet and attract your tribe, and they're going to be attracted to these passionate causes, not necessarily saving the planet and global warming, not necessarily that big. But for example, I was I was in purchasing for rack mounted servers, and I just saw how hard it was for people to order them if they didn't have a technical background. So I researched how this stuff was sold and how to explain it to people. And what we figured out is this intuitive way of explaining what kind of servers you need to the purchasing people, instead of relying on the tech people. Okay, so my passionate thing is to help buying servers accessible to non-technical people. You see what I mean? It doesn't have to be some grand cause, but it has to be something that is different and that you passionately believe. And then people in that target audience are going to be attracted to that story.
So storytelling. I want to come back to that in a moment. But before we keep going on storytelling, I want to remind you, if you're watching this and you're watching this live or during the playback, that if you've found this content helpful or inspirational or motivational in any way, shape, or form, go ahead and bump the like button, because the platform that you're watching us on will send this video to more people. And the more people that watch this video, the more it helps us in turn. So I want to thank you in advance for doing that. And go ahead and share the message with other folks as well. So, Tim, let's get back to storytelling, because I find it fascinating how, and it's almost like a re-education of sorts when you're in marketing, because there's a lot of stuff of baggage that you're carrying when you come out of marketing school or MBA school. And storytelling is it's an art as much as it is a science. But when it connects and it lands well and is executed well, it really does make an impact. And the passion around storytelling and the message delivery of that, can you give us some more examples of either brands or clients that you've worked with that have used this narrative of storytelling to effectively communicate with their audience?
Well, you should always use stories. I'll talk about one of the evolutionary reasons that stories exist. They're a way of sharing experience without you having to go through it. So if you tell me the story of that lion that was chasing you at the beginning of the show, I don't have to actually run away from the lion. I can just hear your story of how you dealt with that lion attack, and that saves me the trouble, and it gives me a survival edge. So stories are a way to pass on experience that helps us survive. And again, they're going to be experienced within our tribe based on our cultural norms and our values. But wrapping things up in a story bypasses all of those defenses. So like, we were talking about Dave earlier, like the rational stuff. And here's our 3 plans. Buy one of our 3 plans. Okay, that's trying to talk to the rational brain. And again, that's not the one in terms of that makes decisions. But if I tell you a story about how this one particular plan helped one of our clients, then you're listening, and it's like you're getting direct experience without having to go through all of the pitfalls and problems that they did. And ultimately, of course, the moral of the story is like they're way better off now that they found us and our solution. But always tell things in story form. It bypasses the logical defenses of the brain.
I like what? Oh, hold up. Sounds like a pro tip. Let's back that up. I like what you just said. Ori, give us pro tip. Tim Mash, give us pro tip número 3, por favor.
Don't put me to sleep with facts and statistics. Tell me a story. It bypasses all of those defenses of logic and goes directly into my brain, and I can't even stop it.
Ooh, Dave, did you hear that? I know we're recording this, but this is great. I love that. This is a great pro tip because I know we talk about this stuff all the time on our internal meetings, but I like that. So somehow there's a part of our brain. Let's go further because I know you are big into the neuro part of the brain. Where in our brain, what happens? You're telling me that story, right? Like you're saying, tell me the passion or tell me how it helped me. And plan one is what helped another customer. What's happening in the brain that makes storytelling so powerful versus the plan A will save you 50, plan B will save you 60, and plan C will save you 80?
Well, the way to think about it is humans can't survive alone. First of all, we're mammals, and all mammals congregate in groups or herds of various sizes, but we're the most hypersocial of all mammals by far. Our intimate group size is about 100 to 200 people, and our brain, the modern part of the brain, is actually designed to figure out all of the interactions. Like if I do business with you, and then I also, my son's dating your daughter, what does that mean? Okay, to keeping up in real time all of those social relationships. So the fact is that group identity and group cohesion is the most important thing to our survival. And stories reinforce values, they transmit knowledge, they have increased the cohesion of the group. So again, it's very important to understand what group you're talking to, but the purpose of stories is to keep us tightly bound, and the most cohesive group wins, basically.
So humans being hypersocial, these past 2.5 years must have been very, very trying on that need to be hypersocial.
Yes. And I mean, actually, we've seen that there's a skyrocketing demand for mental health services. Suicides are up, mental health problems like depression and anxiety. Look, I have 2 teens in the house. I've dealt with it on a personal level, and they've been really affected by being out of school, especially that kind of 12 to 25-year-old cohort that depends on other people for their social development and self-image. They were really the ones that suffered. Younger kids are a little tuned out. As adults, arguably, we have some mechanisms to compensate for that. But the worst thing you can do to people in general is social isolation. And so I think it's like there's a case involving Texas right now where somebody's been in isolation for 20 years in prison. That is literally going to drive you insane. And I think in the future, we'll look back on this stuff as cruel and unusual punishment.
Well, let's hope so. In that we are rational, although you are saying that we make a lot of irrational decisions. Let's throw away the key, lock them up, and that makes more sense than sometimes what actually works, right?
Yeah. So you actually have to keep people. There was a study, a really famous longitudinal study, I believe it's been running for over 70 years, where they tracked Harvard kids that started Harvard and then their poor South Boston Southie cousins. Over their whole lifetime, they've been interviewing them and seeing what basically makes a good life. Number one is strong social supports and contacts. In other words, not having social supports is the medical equivalent in terms of outcomes of being a 2-pack a day smoker.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow.
So go out and seek those friendships, whether it's stamp collecting or talking about Super Bowl commercials in the sports bar. You have to have social contacts and a healthy support system. By far the thing that contributes more to your well-being and your satisfaction in life.
You mentioned something during the before actually we had the podcast. We had a chance to talk about a few things, and you mentioned something that stuck with me. especially now you're talking about it in a social context, and that is corporate culture. And you'd mentioned to me that there's an actual percentage that once you reach that threshold will actually affect the entire culture, not five, not this one. Can you talk about that? Because I thought that was fascinating, especially for right now. There's companies that are making a big pivot. A lot of companies are changed because everything has changed. Every industry's been touched in the last 2 years, and we're undergoing a major cultural shift in attitudes towards work and how work should be done, how it should be delivered, services, all the rest. Talk a little bit about that and how a certain amount of people, you'd mentioned this exact percentage, and how then once you reach that threshold, it can actually affect the entire organization.
Yeah, Rolando, that's a really interesting piece of research that has been done fairly recently. And it was basically talking about how do you get people to change a behavior? And you have these kind of loose influences around you, and then you have basically you're modeling the behavior of people. So you're not just listening to what they say, you're watching what they do. And it turns out that that tipping point to actually change behavior is having about a quarter of the people around you adopt that new behavior. In other words, you might be at 15%, 18%, 20%. You go, look, we're pushing more people to do this and nothing's happening. And all of a sudden you hit that 25% critical mass and boom, it switches over and a lot more people start adopting that behavior. So if you want to seed behavior change, you need to do it in a small group and have that group reach critical mass, and take that larger group and merge it with a bigger group and have them get infected, pardon the viral pun, infected with it. There has to be a certain threshold. So here's a key point. It's never going to be something that's influenced by somebody popular. You know, people say, well, look, Oprah started talking about whatever, intermittent fasting, and all of a sudden everybody's doing it. Actually, no. Oprah has an audience to defend. She's got her listeners to basically adapt to. She's never going to be on the cutting edge, not Oprah in particular, but anybody with a stake and a big audience. So she's only going to jump on trends once they become popular and help them hit critical mass, but she's not going to be the one that stakes her whole persona and brand on kind of pissing into the wind and trying to get people to adapt something new. So influencers are only helpful to your brand once there's already that critical mass. They can help accelerate it, but they're not going to be the catalyst for behavior change. That needs to be a small, dedicated, passionate group inside of the tribe.
I want you to go back again. This is pro tip numero cuatro, because there's a lot of folks listening to us, including me. I'm listening to you, and you're talking about influencers and their role in the marketing roadmap, so to speak. And I think you hit pro tip numero cuatro. Go for it, Ori. Give us another pro tip for Tim. Pro tip numero cuatro, Tim. Talk about influencers. Please state the importance or lack thereof of them in the role of marketing.
If you want people to change a behavior, they have to observe a critical mass, about 25% of people around them actually doing that behavior. That's the tipping point. Influencers aren't going to help you until that critical mass is hit. They can help accelerate the adoption of it, but they're not going to stake their brand and reputation pushing against some far out idea that hasn't been adopted by a lot of people.
Awesome, Tim. I also want to take this moment to thank Mike Deegan. I know who you are, Mike. We did a lot of work in the past, all kinds of stuff we can't even talk about on the air. Good stuff, patriotic stuff serving the country. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you watching us, and haven't seen you in a while. Love to see you soon, brother. Stay well. All right. Thanks, Mike. All right, Tim. We hit pro tip number 4. I'm gonna let Dave's probably got a few other things. Go ahead and jump in, Dave.
You know, I really like that approach of reaching in order to change or give people new solutions. They need to reach that 25%, that critical mass point. I can see how that would work with something as simple as software, where you might get a pilot group of 10, 15 people, get them trying out a solution, get them to like it, give it a thumbs up, so that you can go from the pilot to maybe just a little bit larger. So you kind of start spreading out that solution, get it in the hands of the users for the organization, reach that 25%, and now you can get closer with the influencers to get it over that hump, and then hopefully get your full deployment.
Yeah, your
So it's
mainstream
important.
adoption. Yeah, I call it mainstream adoption. Absolutely.
And there's a lot of things that folks watching us today, and even watching us into the future, that are going to be watching this during the playback, they're going to take away a lot of things. I know we could spend another, easily, Tim, I could spend another hour just picking your brain about the Primal Brain, what you've written about it, your life story, and how those would be effective uses of marketing tactics for a lot of folks watching us today. But what I'd like you to do is, talk a bit about either your book or something that's in there that you really want our audience to resonate with, that you want to leave us with, so that they can take away back either to their boss or their team, or even for their own selves. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, well, thanks, Rolando. I actually want to talk about who the book is for, because I wrote it for 3 different audiences. The way to think about Unleash Your Primal Brain is that it's an operating system for all human beings on the planet. So if you want to look at it with a business hat on, sales, marketing, persuasion, leadership, you can read it and get a lot out of it. If you want to look at it for interpersonal relationships, gender differences, things like that, culture, storytelling, you can look at it from that standpoint. Or you can look at it from a personal development angle. How do I live a happy life as an ape with these evolutionary things inside of me? And that goes to sleep, memory, learning, happiness, drugs and addiction. All of that's covered too. So basically, it's an operating system for how to be a human being. And it covers, in a very non-technical way, our complete evolution. I made it a lot of fun. I think you'll agree. You've read it.
Yes.
There's an audiobook version of it that I've recorded personally, ebooks as well.
I saw your audio booth on your website, which was interesting, how you did the audiobook and talking about it was like a sauna because you can't breathe and all that other stuff.
Oh yeah, I made my own out of moving blankets and PVC pipe. Made a little booth to record my audiobook stuff in, because I live close to San Diego Airport, and every minute or two another plane goes by.
Wow. A side note on the tech side, something that I've stumbled across that I've found really does a good job of cleaning up audio is Descript. And I don't know if you used it or not during your recordings, but it does a fascinating job, really good job of cleaning up audio, even from horrible audio sourcing. I know you sat down with a Yeti microphone, and I'm sure you could probably.
Well, now, you have to go a step further, because for Amazon or Audible, you have to take out all the breath sounds in between. That was a bit of work.
Descript does that.
Yeah, it's a pretty technical. It took me about 3-4 hours of work to create every hour of final edited audio. Yeah, it's a lot harder than most people think, but yeah, certainly good tools can help. So by the way, speaking of the book, just want to put something out there.
Go ahead.
So if you go to primalbrain.com/book, you can pick from the table of contents any chapter you want. I'll actually send you the chapter of your choice. So whatever you're interested in, memory, learning, gender differences, storytelling, or social natures, pick your chapter. I'll send it to you.
Awesome. And you heard it here on What the Tech with Tim Ash. But before we leave Tim Ash, there's some questions we got to ask him that we ask every guest that comes on the What the Tech. These are not right or wrong answers. These are your answers, Tim, that our audience wants to know, to get to know your brain a little better. All right. So, Ori, are you ready? What is your favorite musician or musical group?
I love the Eagles, I got to say. Maybe that dates me a little bit, but man, those guys had such a long run at the top and made so much good music. For me, that's right up there.
And there wasn't a lot of auto-tune back then to enhance your voice. You had to actually sing. Although I love you, T-Pain. If you're watching, big ups to T-Pain and his auto-tune and all the other guys that use a ton of auto-tune. I do love a lot of the modern music as well. No knock on it, because you've all done really fabulous job of marketing yourselves. Favorite app on your phone, Tim?
Probably my Samsung Health app. It tells me how many steps I've taken and all of that. It makes me feel good about getting off my lazy butt and doing something.
I use my health app a lot too, and I do appreciate going back and seeing what I've done or what I haven't done. And it's definitely that negativity bias when I'm not doing as much as I did the day before. I feel like I got to get out there.
Right. I know. It's just, you have it in your face that you didn't walk those 1,000 steps, Dave.
Yeah, right. 10,000. I need 10,000, right? Is that
10,000. Oh, 10,000. Oh, there you go. My bad.
My threshold is 6. I feel good if I've done 6,000 steps. So. Low expectations, then you can achieve them.
There you go.
They say under promise, over deliver.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of deliver, you live in San Diego, on the West Coast, where there's fabulous food. I love going out to the West Coast. I love San Diego. Last time I was there, there was a very good Mexican restaurant near downtown. I can't even remember the name of it because it's been a while. But I know you have a lot of good food. What is your favorite food when you either go to a restaurant or even take out?
It's sushi. Yeah, it's me and sushi for the rest of my life. High quality sashimi. I'm there.
You got some good stuff out where.
By the way, just a little thing I heard once. The why you need marketing. It's the difference between cold dead fish and sushi. That in a nutshell is why you need marketing.
There you go. Help us break it down, understand it better. And when you're communicating, what's your favorite method of communication? You got a multiple choice here. It's email, text, a phone call, or some type of instant message.
It's going on a long walk and talk and hike with somebody.
And we got to add that into our multiple choice there, Ori. They're the first guest to actually mention that you want face-to-face contact.
I'll go even more skin to skin. It turns out that 20 seconds of skin to skin contact or a hug releases oxytocin and makes you feel like part of the in-group, makes you feel safe, that mother-child bond. Hug people and hold the hugs.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. There's probably research that you know about. I'm trying to recall it recently that I read. I don't know if it was on the Times or somebody was saying how even if you face-to-face, when you have face-to-face meeting, there's something about the chemical exchange that happens, and that you're more likely to create a connection when you do that there's actually some science on the chemistry and chemicals that are happening in your brain and in their brain, and that you both start forming ideas collectively as a person or as a group when you start doing that.
Yeah, well, and then that happens during storytelling. They've shown on visual imaging in the brain, when somebody tells a story with a slight delay, the person on the receiving end of the story, this could be even the story's in translation, is essentially syncing up the same parts of the brain. So it's like mind melding on Star Trek and Mr. Spock.
My goodness, boy. So if anything today, the takeaway, at least one of them, is storytelling. That would be the word of the day if we were on Sesame Street. Was it Sesame Street that did word of the day?
Oh man, Big Bird. You got it.
The word of the day, today's story. The word of today is storytelling. And what it could do for you and your life and your company and everything else. So, Tim, you've been a wonderful sport today. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to leave us with before we wrap up.
No, I'm easy to find. If you need help with digital marketing consulting or public speaking, go to timash.com, and anything book related is at primalbrain.com.
So go ahead and get a hold of Tim. I got to tell you, he's a man of his word. He's got a lot of experience. You want to have him in your corner if you're trying to either your startup. I know you've worked with startups before, as well as well-established brands that maybe need some polish. They need some guidance. They need some direction. Maybe get their marketing team with the storytelling, and they need a little bit more hand-holding. So Tim is the man when it comes to these types of things. So Tim, I really appreciate you coming on our show today, enlightening us, giving us some wisdom, sharing with our audience your years of wisdom, and you've boiled it down, and you've been so good to come on and give us some of your time today. So thank you, Tim. I appreciate that.
Oh, gentlemen, it's been my pleasure. A lot
All
of
right.
fun.
Awesome. Thank you. And I also want to remind you, if you enjoyed this interview with Tim, we've got some other pieces of information and videos for you to enjoy right here on your screen, where you will find some information that will give you value. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you in these videos.